Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's now those vital minutes.
A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. And that ties in with the name of this morning's music, which was indeed created this morning, called I Don't Know in the Mornings, where you wake up and you go, where am I? What's happening? Thank you, Rick Cleffel, for this new music. Listeners may recognize our guest today from his frequent dream shares on the journal. Stephen E. Popp is an avid dream enthusiast dedicated to his inner world. He is also a gardener and a semi-retired horticulturist. Perhaps it's inevitable that he is especially sensitive to the landscapes of his dreams, something most of us ignore. Plus, we'll get into his Tibetan dream yoga practice and his earliest dreams, some of which seem to date from before birth. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. I'm going to start with just a personal dream journal, my own personal dream journal, a little snippet of a dream that I had on Monday, which was Epiphany, January 6th. It was there's a lot going on in this dream. It seemed like all my regular themes had coalesced into this one dream. We had the Burning Man theme, we had fire, we had sliding down a steep slope, we had farms, we had freeways, and one moment there, I'm at the top of a hill, and there's a redwood, a giant redwood with like 6-7 feet in diameter that's on fire, and I can see the inside of it flaming. So the core is flaming, and it is shooting all the way up inside the trunk of the tree and to the top of the tree. And I think the phrase "crown fire," we got to call 911. But there's other people there, and they're like, "Why would we do that?" Like and I never do. I never get around to that. So there's something about that, and it's hard to know what your own dreams are, but I was kind of exploring this dream with my dream coach, actually, Bill St. Cyr, and he's like, this reminds me of the Kundalini, and I'm like, whoa, that really was a big aha for me. And so I've just been kind of imagining myself as that tree on fire all the way from the toes up to the crown, just the flames that run through me. Oh my gosh, feeling it right now. It's just one of those images that just jumped right out at me. So especially we have a gardener here on the show, I wanted to get into the tree image. So Stephen E. Popp, I'm glad to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Catherine. It's a real pleasure to be here and an honor to be your guest today as well. And I can see your crown chakra flaming even as we speak.
Because we are in person, which is lovely.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Stephen E. Popp is the owner of Green Tiger Garden Nursery on the Central California coast and co-host of the popular In the Garden show, which precedes the Dream Journal on KSQD. He is a practicing Buddhist, a Tibetan dream yogi, and a lucid dreamer. He creates fantastical sand sculptures based on his dreams, calling them dreamed of landscapes or dreamscapes. And you can contact him at greentigergarden.com or else on his very active Facebook page.
There you go. Yeah,
and you'll see a lot about gardening, not so much about dreaming, but that's Steve Popp.
Yeah. That's perhaps part of the tradition with Tibetan dream Tibetan dream yoga is something that includes lucid dreaming, and lucid dreaming would be sort of the platform for that.
Okay.
But typically, practitioners of the Tibetan dream yogas, they don't share their experiences a whole lot.
Right.
And I guess I've heard it likened to being in a dark cave with a candle and giving the candle away. So
Wait a minute, being in a dark cave and giving that candle away. This is the Tibetan dream yoga.
Well, and part of, and we'll get into that later.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the dreamscapes here,
Yeah.
but the aspect, what separates Tibetan dream yoga work from just lucid dreaming is that all of the different yogas require a meditation practice as well, and they are attempting to get beneath the ego, get beneath the ignorance, and find an awakening. So when we share our experiences in the yoga work, we run the risk of entrapping ourselves in our egos again. But that doesn't mean I can't talk about some of my stuff and the dreamscape in particular. I should give some background to it. What is a dreamscape? Yeah. Well, I create these on what's called a sand table. And a little history. What is a sand table? Well, these were... they go back to ancient Greece, and they were used for creating military maps by the ancient Greeks. Later, in Prussia, a country that no longer exists, but in the 1800s, there was an individual in 1812. His name was George Leopold von Reiswitz, and he decided that he would help create, a game called Kriegsspiel that they used to train their officers in military battlefield tactics.
War games?
War games,
Yeah.
precisely. That's the direct translation of Kriegsspiel. So he came up with this table, putting wet sand on it, and formed terrain so that the officers being trained in tactics could more realistically experience what it might be like on a battlefield. And it was so successful that it's accredited for helping the Prussians win the Franco-Prussian War against France, 1870-71. Now, fast forward, yes, sand tables are used for individuals who still war game with miniatures, usually, and in any kind of a period. And they give you a unique experience for playing a game. I have used it for those purposes, but I've also, in my previous life as being a landscaper, in particular a feng shui garden design landscaper, I would use the sand table to create maquettes for gardens that I wanted to work on. Before putting pencil to paper and all of that sort of thing, creating a design, I would just run these ideas through my head and see what they looked like visually, albeit in a miniature form. But I would scale them and be as precise as I could once I had a base plan from a client, and sometimes just playing around with ideas. It was just something I would do. So what happened, how that sort of developed or transcended was I started having dreams, both in and out of these landscapes. And what I mean by that is I would have a dream that would give me an image of a place. And for instance, there was this one dream I had of going into this very small, kind of narrow canyon, and there were these huge crystals everywhere within it, and it was vibrating, and I was, intensely moved by it. So I went to my sand table and I recreated that scene. And I have some crystals and I stuck them in there, and I tried to make it as closely as possible to what I had been dreaming. And I've done this numerous times. I like to photograph them. I haven't done all of them, but I think you've seen a few of them.
I have, yeah. In fact, I was hoping, if it's okay with you, to post a few on the episode page.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Great. Okay. Beautiful. You really can feel yourself
thank you.
in the place.
Well, and then you bring up the next point, is that what I would use these for after the dream, post-dream, would be to re-enter into the dream and do what would be considered as one of the yogas, perhaps, the illusory yoga of daytime dreaming, and move through that landscape and kind of see what sorts of images came up for me. Now, there are individuals who will do art after their dreams, and you've had them on your show.
Oh, yeah.
Talked about whether it's drawing or painting, sometimes sculpting. This also, the medium of sand is really powerful for me, and I use all sorts of other things. There's mosses and twigs and rocks and you name it, sawdust that I've actually dyed myself to color it, or you can use the railroad modeling stuff, whatever you want to use. I've even used spray paint at times to get a special effect.
Sure.
But you can then create these beautiful things that remind me of what is a practice in Tibetan Buddhism is sand mandala, creating a mandala of sand. Now, typically, these are very, very intricate designs following a particular routine or pattern. They're used for deep meditation purposes. And in one instance, I was privileged to be up in San Francisco when the Dalai Lama came to sweep away the sand mandala that had been created by monks from his Gelug monastery.
Because they spent hundreds of hours creating these.
Yes,
I've seen
with these little kind of jaunting tools and making these little lines of different colored sands to create these intricate designs. And there is a mandala practice where people can use a small box with sand in it or other items.
Right, just like a little Zen garden kind of a thing. I've seen that. Yes,
exactly.
yes.
Very similar. And the interesting thing about mandala in general, and this also sort of applies to my Dreamscapes, is that generally speaking, the most activity is going to be at the edges. And the further inward you go, the quieter things get,
Really?
the more contemplative they get. And you kind of can get into almost like a daytime trance. I can,
Sure.
anyways. Also, I have used these designs, and sometimes I'll create something in advance of a dream and try to dream about it. And I will actually try to do a meditation where I'm moving through this design. Now, later, when I'm in bed, there was one I think I sent you that was like of a big labyrinth type design. So that one was created after a dream, but I have used that same process in reverse where I will try to meditate my way through it. And then as I go to sleep, as I lay down preparing to dream and go through the multiple cycles of the different brainwaves, I start thinking about that. I start mentally visualizing taking this journey through this dreamscape. And I tell you, I go to sleep immediately. It just knocks me out.
It's like a trance kind of a thing, yeah.
Very much so. I mean, I've had insomnia in the past. And just by telling myself a story, trying to create a story, I can get down to that next level. We're on our alpha, we're on our higher level brain wavelengths going into alpha. The delta is starting with delta's the bottom, and theta, then delta. So yeah, and it's all how many hertz are happening, and
so the visualization happens in the theta waves, which is I think also is happening when we're dreaming. So that's why the visualization can. It
can actually even become in the hypnagogic stage, where you're just on that bardo, that gap of going into the dream state, and that brings up then what is the difference between lucid dreaming and what is the difference between the yoga work that I do? By the way, a yogi, for those who are wondering, doesn't make me a spiritual man or anything of that. A yogi is one who practices a yoga.
Yes, exactly. I checked. You didn't use that word in your bio. I grabbed it to make it succinct, and I did Google to make sure it just means someone who practices.
Yeah, a yoga, which is actually yoking yourself to a practice. The yoke is the yoga. So,
but you are a practitioner, and you have
am.
more than one spiritual practice, and
I do.
Tibetan Dream Yoga is one of those practices.
It is, and my Tibetan background, or Tibetan Buddhism, my Buddhist background is the flavor that I fell in love with was Tibetan Buddhism. I tried to experiment with Zen and just was a little too austere for me, and the Tibetan aspect is very colorful, and it was that same experience up in San Francisco that kind of lit my fuse. That was
mandala.
A long time ago. Yeah. And there are different schools within Tibetan Buddhism. The Nyingma is the ancient one. There's the Kagyu, which is the oral tradition, the Sakya, which is the scholarly and philosophical Theosophical and the Gelug, which is the Reformed, and more recently, a fifth school has been allowed by the Dalai Lama, which is the Dzogchen Bon tradition.
It's interesting. I've heard all those phrases, and I didn't realize they were like sects, basically different lineages.
Schools of thought. Schools of thought.
Okay.
Yeah, and they all coexist at this time, but Nyingma was the most ancient one, what it started with. The Dalai Lama is actually part of the Reform school of the Gelug.
Okay.
But he covers all the basics.
And is Tibetan Dream Yoga like one of those, or is it separate, or is it a little part of each of those?
So, yeah, that's a great question. There was an individual who is credited with bringing Buddhism from India to Tibet, and his name was Padmasambhava. He's more succinctly just referred to as Guru Rinpoche. Guru is a teacher, Rinpoche is a precious one. And so when you hear somebody referring to Guru Rinpoche, they're usually referring to Padmasambhava, the individual who brought Buddhism from India to Tibet. And it was somewhat combined with the Bon tradition that already existed there. But there was an individual teacher named Naropa who is accredited with these 6 yogas, and they call them the 6 yogas of Naropa. He didn't invent them. It's just he wrote them down, more or less. So I practice 4 of these, but I'll list all 6. There's illusory yoga, which is daytime. All right. There's dream yoga, which generally we're talking about the REM state of sleep, the rapid eye movement state. Sleep yoga. Sleep yoga is actually one of the goals of doing Tibetan yoga. It's generally only going to be an advanced practitioner who is able to do this. You are in the delta stage of deep sleep, restorative sleep, and you are fully aware.
Really? Wow.
You are awake.
So lucid even during the non-REM parts of sleep.
Yeah, and you're not running around doing things like you do in a lucid dream necessarily, but you are totally
probably meditating
aware.
Or something. Right.
Precisely. There is then the Bardo yoga, and you might often hear in Tibetan Buddhism of, after we die, we go to the Bardo. Well, there are multiple Bardos. That's the Bardo of becoming that we transfer to, transgress to after this life. And Bardo really, in literal translation, is just a gap. So that's where the hypnagogic state and the hypomonic when you're coming back out.
Oh, hypnopompic.
Hypnopompic, yeah, thank you. Those would both be considered bardos. But there is a yoga all around the bardo state, and it's actually used as a preparatory for meditators for death or moving on. So the other 2 that I'm not going to get into at all, and I have practiced, but it's pretty advanced, is the Chandali yoga, which is inner heat, and the Phowa yoga, which is basically it's the ejection of consciousness from your body. In Taoism, it would be considered something like the golden embryo, where you are physically leaving your body and leaving it behind. You're moving on, but hopefully not going to the bardo.
Right, leaving all lives behind.
Yeah, if you can, unless you're a bodhisattva, in which case you're dedicating yourself to coming back, and you don't go till everybody goes.
Right.
And the Dalai Lama was once asked, what happens when everybody becomes enlightened? And he thought about it for a moment, and then he laughed and smiled and said, we have a big party.
Yeah, really.
It would work for me.
That's good. Yeah. Okay.
So that is sort of in a nutshell what Tibetan yoga work is about, and most of what I do is in the dream yoga and the illusory yoga, which is the awakened state and then the REM state of yoga. And that's where the lucid dreaming comes in. And what's wonderful about lucid dreaming for me is that it suspends any concept of linear time. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can hear about with lucid dreaming. And I know you've had plenty of guests on, and there have been lots of books written about lucid dreaming and techniques to get there. And I can share a couple of the techniques that I will use. And it's actually part of the illusory yoga or the awakened state yoga. But it is a practice where you are attempting to realize your Buddha nature, to become awakened, to become enlightened. And, we should point out that with lucid dreaming in general, there's a great story from Aristotle, and it's called the myth of the ring of Gyges. And Gyges was a shepherd who discovers a ring of invisibility. And Aristotle uses this as sort of a morality tale. But the idea is that what would you do if you could become invisible? How would you act? What would you do? I mean, would you go rob Fort Knox? Would you go, have a fun time with your neighbor or his wife? Or, would you, what would you do? And so the Buddha, in Gyges' case, he did it to fulfill his fantasies and for self-interest. And that would be what we would call the normal person, or the unfiltered mind, or something, or non-filtered mind, or defiled
the
mind.
Ego or something.
Yeah, precisely. Whereas a Buddhist in a Tibetan tradition would be attempting then to use that state or that experience for the benefit of others, of all sentient beings in general. So that plays into the whole lucid dream aspect. And there's different levels of lucidity. There's barely lucid up to hyper lucid. And you can actually be in a dream and realize that you're dreaming and become lucid and then go back into the dream without, being lucid anymore. To the far end of the extreme, which is hyper lucidity, which I've only experienced a few times, I'll be honest. And then you are having incredible, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. Colors are different, experiences are different, emotions you can see. I'm a synesthete as well, so I see colors with numbers and letters and sounds and touch and things like that. So that kind of adds.
That
to
seems like
thing.
the dreams could be pretty much a riot of sensations if you have all that overlap.
It can be, and in recent years, I have Parkinson's syndrome right now, and I am dealing with that as it interrupts my sleep a lot. But I recently, revisiting the dream yoga aspect, realize that it's not so bad, because if you figure we go through these different levels, these different stages of brain waves, it's about a 90-minute cycle. So we're going from oh darn, I don't even know where I wrote it down now, but I had this listed here. I think it's beta, alpha, theta,
Alpha,
delta.
theta, delta.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds right.
So we're operating on our normal basis of 40 to 80 hertz in beta, and as we begin to meditate, we go down to about 8 to 10 or 4 to 10 in alpha, and then in theta we're around 4, and at delta we're 0 to 4. Okay. So the concept then of I forgot where I was going with this. That's all right. Well, anyways.
Well, we could go. I mean, we could definitely go off into meditation. Is something that
Sure.
I'm making another run at.
So meditation is great. I'm glad you brought that up. The type of meditation that is most beneficial for doing Tibetan Dream Yoga is mindfulness meditation. And again, a lot of books have been written. I think one of the best was by the now passed away Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who was of a Theravada tradition of Buddhism. And a little tiny sliver of a book called The Miracle of Mindfulness that he wrote many, many years ago, which is so wonderfully simple to look at and to read. It might not be easy to practice, but it is something that, and I think, what have been your obstacles with meditation personally, Catherine?
Boredom.
Boredom. You fall
Straight
asleep?
up boredom.
Do you fall asleep?
I don't fall asleep. I'm just like, are we done yet? I mean, that's really literally the most predominant thought. I've lately playing around with this idea of like noticing my thoughts as texture, like to try to take the content out of them and notice like, well, there's like a really strong rope of thought right there. And then underneath that, there's all this weave of thoughts. I have so many thoughts. There's just, It's just a thicket of thoughts.
So that's one of the major complaints with early practitioners of meditation of any form is, God, I can't make my mind empty. I have nothing but thoughts. Well, that's really not the goal. But isn't it? Your mind, well, maybe if you're at that, theta, sleep yoga state of, being, completely dead asleep, so to speak, but fully awake.
Okay. Yeah.
The concept that I was taught was that imagine sitting under a waterfall, and all of your thoughts is the waterfall, and they're just pouring over you all the time, all the time.
Oh my God.
There are other ways of looking at it, like they're clouds coming by, or another story is that you're having a party, and your thoughts are the guests arriving at the door. You greet them, you invite them in. You let them go in, and pretty soon another one comes along. But in between, you just keep coming back to the breath. You keep coming back to your breathing. You're in, you're out. Mindfulness meditation, however, takes it a step further. It can be a sitting meditation, but it's also a waking meditation. It's walking, it's moving, it's doing. You could be doing the dishes and practicing mindfulness meditation. You could be sweeping the floor and be practicing mindfulness meditation. You could be having a conversation and hopefully be able to practice mindfulness meditation.
So that's like being aware of the subtle details of the moment?
Very much so. Okay. Being present in the moment is the kind of the root, the nut of it there. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say keep with your practice.
Okay, well.
And now I do specific meditations. There are all kinds of ways of getting into the lucid state. And one of the things I like to do is in what's part of what's called the illusory yoga, which is dealing with reality, right? I mean, we have this concept of reality, and when we are dreaming, we believe it to be real.
True.
Unless we're lucid, we know that it's a dream, we believe our dreams to be real, but they're not, right? So that gets into this whole concept of what's called the myth of knowledge, or the illusion of the myth of knowledge, which is when you are certain that you know something, but you don't. Or said another way, it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so, said Mark Twain. So that's a real hard thing or concept to deal with, because we have these concepts about things, we have these assurances that things are a certain way, and by God, we've taught these things to other people, and we can pound our fist on the table and say that's just the way it is, but it ain't so. You got to be able to start working with moving, and that's where it's so hard for the free thinkers in society today. They come up against this all the time with these established norms, these established thoughts and concepts that may be very false.
Right.
You have to be able to question.
Right, but if you never really know it for sure, anything for sure, then you don't even know that. Well, you don't even know if you know that.
Sure, and you could go with Joseph Campbell said follow your bliss, right? But that's only half of it. But the other half isn't follow your fear, although that is a part of it. You got to take the middle way. It's like you're playing your ukulele, you're tuning it, not too tight, not too loose. It's got to be, too tight it breaks, too loose it sounds soggy, and you got to be right in the middle way. So you've got to find that balance somewhere in there. But to question your current, present reality of awakeness, I think I read somewhere that human beings, we perceive only between 3 to 4% of all that we call reality. So there is, 97 to 96% that we don't see. Whether that's energy fields, sound fields, you name it.
Or the stuff behind your head, or what you're not paying attention to.
Exactly, what you're not paying attention to, or what you believe but is false. So to help get yourself worked into a lucid dream to begin with, there are things you can do during the day. Like I carry with me... I carry with me this little business card, and on the back of it, it says,
"Is this a dream?" That's one of the same reality test questions,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so I'll look at this several times a day, then I'll take it away, And I'll bring it back a couple minutes later to look at it. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, it's not a dream. I'm awake. Okay.
But do you do the tests, like check, you see if you can breathe with your nose, please put your hand through a wall?
You can do that too.
How many fingers do you have?
Passing through material objects is part of lucid dreaming for sure.
Right, but that's one of the tests.
It is, yeah, or jumping up in the air.
And see if you float. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, if you come back down on your feet right away, you're not dreaming, you're awake, right? But then at the same time, if I were to pull this card out in a lucid dream and look at it and say, is this a dream? And then I move it away and I bring it back, it's going to say something else.
The words change.
The words change, or the thing on your watch is different, or a book, or, well, fingers, and there's all kinds of interesting things. So that's just one of the things.
Great. Steve, so this is wonderful. This is Stephen E. Popp of Green Tiger Garden. And we are talking about all kinds of things, lucid dreaming, Buddhism, landscapes. In fact, my mind just feels like we've traversed many, many landscapes since we began, and we haven't even touched on early dreams. And so when we come back from the break, we're going to get into some of Stephen's very earliest dreams, which may even have preceded birth. So stay tuned for that. Stephen E. Popp. And we are broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Dream Journal. I'd like to send out a special welcome to our far-flung listeners. We have listeners in Santa Cruz, San Mateo, San Francisco, Novato, Ashburn, Virginia, Emmaus, Pennsylvania, and New York, New York. So glad to have you listening live. People all over are interested in their dreams. If you want to nudge the algorithm to help spread that interest, please follow the Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app. You can also leave a rating or a review if you are inspired, but even more importantly, tell your friends. We're interested in this show and getting folks talking about dreaming. And please contact me if you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about a new book or to let folks know about your dream-related offerings. The Dream Journal is a platform, and you can share your ideas. Just give me a call. Or send me an email at Catherine@ksqd.org, KATHERINE @ksqd.org. You can also follow me at Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows and pod drops. And follow hashtag The Dream Journal and @Experiential Dreamwork. So next week, I am excited to say that we will be doing a live all-caller show. I haven't done that in a while. It seemed to be time. Do you have a dream you're curious about? Do you have a dream-related question? Send me an email or DM me at Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Better yet, mark your calendar to call in between 10 and 11 Pacific time on Saturday morning, January 18th, so you can join us live on the air. It's always better to have the dreamer present when we're talking about a dream. It's more respectful, and I think you'll find it more helpful. But send me an email, send me a message, call in. My email address, again, is Catherine@ksqd.org. Okay, today's guest is Stephen E. Popp of Green Tiger Garden, and we are talking about lucid dreaming, dream landscapes, and his personal journey with dreams.
Yeah.
And so I know we have a question from Max, but I'm wondering if we want to wait for a moment, or do you want to ask it now, Max, or do you want to? Okay. Well, I guess we'll go to Max for a second. Then. So here, hand the microphone over. So Max has a question to ask Steve.
Okay, Steve, you brought up the fact that you need to have a test to tell if you're dreaming or not. I've heard this from many other people too, and I'm just amazed that you can't tell the difference, because I'm also sort of an obligate lucid dreamer. I can't get away from it. And aside from the part where I'm just going under or just coming out of it, it's very obvious to me that it's a dream all the time. Like I don't have to ask myself or verify it. So this will come into bear next week when you have the call-in one, because I have a dream where I act very inappropriately.
Those are the best kinds of dreams there. Yeah. No, it's I would say that's pretty unusual. To have an obligate lucid dreamer. I hadn't heard that phrase. It's like cats being obligate carnivores.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that my first lucid dream did come without my first early lucid dreams, without even practicing the yogas. Definitely just arrived. I wasn't testing. I wasn't trying to do anything. The test aspects are mostly derived to help individuals who have a hard time knowing if they're dreaming, remembering they're dreaming, or to become aware in their dream that they are dreaming, to achieve lucidity. And there are other things to do, like preparatory meditations before falling asleep. There are in the yogas, we do some breathing stuff. We try to cleanse ourselves, and it's taking the lion mudra on the right side and closing the right nostril so that you exhale all of the junk wind out of the left nostril. Several deep breaths and exhaling, and then the reaffirming of I will awaken in my dream. I will know that I am dreaming. But for the just having it happen all the time. One of the things I've discovered with Parkinson's, is that we tend to during REM sleep we have that muscle paralysis, and it kind of keeps you from acting out your dreams. And with individuals who have certain sleep disorders, but Parkinson's can be one of them, we seem to not have the muscle paralysis. I mean, it's kind of like if you see your dog dreaming and twitching, if they didn't have that muscle paralysis, they could jump up and run into the wall and hurt themselves. I mean, it's a survival mechanism of a sort. But I go both ways. I've had a lot of acting out of my dreams, but curiously, my lucid dreams, I'm not acting out so much. It's just the dreams where I'm not lucid. And those are most of my dreams through the night until the morning. My best chance of having a good lucid dream is in that last dream cycle of 90 minutes, 2 hours before waking, generally. And because I wake up all night long, I sleep only for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a stretch. I get that wonderful 20-minute sort of meditation before going back to sleep to help me enhance the aspect of my lucid dreaming and my yogas.
Right, but then you have a case like Max where most of his dreams, all of the dreams are lucid. It's just like,
I can't remember one where I wasn't lucid in it, actually,
so
at the moment.
It's just a normal state for you.
One of the things that I find very interesting, and I hear this from other Parkinson's patients, and I'm not a doctor, by the way, I'm a Parkinson's patient,
Right.
Is that a lot of the times in lucid dream, we think, oh, God, we can fly and we can do these things and we can go all over the place. And yet I've had a lot of these dreams where all of my symptoms of Parkinsonism are there in my dream.
Oh.
And I'm kind of like, oh, man, this sucks. I'm supposed to be free of this stuff,
Right.
So I have to actually mentally go to that place. If I'm in a lucid state, I can say, no, I'm in charge here. I get to control what happens. And if I want to fly, I fly. If I want to float, I float. If I want to walk through walls, I walk through walls. Okay? That's it. But that's a practice. That's a yoga.
Do you have symptoms in your dreams too, Max, or do you?
For the most part, I am as I am in the real world.
Oh, you are? Okay. Because I often find I'm quite different. I don't lucid dream very often. And I'm often like much younger. Sometimes I've been older, be different gender, different species. But you often are as you are when you're dreaming.
Yeah, there's other cases where I've dreamt that I was an animal of some kind, usually a large dog of some kind. But for the most part, I am as a human now.
Oh, interesting. So anything else you want to follow up about this, Max? Is there just any other comments about this whole idea?
No, I'm just always amazed at what other people have found with dreams and all the literature and all the lingo that's around it and everything, because it's sort of interesting to me, having come to this practice of analyzing my dreams late in life.
Yeah. Yeah,
with other people at least. I've always been very introspective on them.
Yeah.
But I'm always amazed at what people have and what they, how it is for them.
And I have not heard of a case of obligate lucid dreaming. This is
Nor I.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean,
it's a gift or maybe a curse.
I was going to say I'm jealous and maybe not. I don't know. I often will
don't
not.
Be, he says.
I will often not be me in my dreams, in my regular dreams, in just the REM state. But in the lucid dreams, I tend to be more me. Now there is this thing about looking in mirrors that can be interesting. And if there are these certain Tibetan yoga states where to know if you're dead and you're in the bardo state, things like you cast no shadow, you can't see the sun or the moon, you don't leave any footsteps in snow or sand, you don't see a reflection in the mirror, you can walk through material things, walls, unimpeded, nobody seems to pay attention to you or notice that you're there. All of those might be signs that, oh, yeah, you know what? I have passed over. I'm now going into that bardo state. But when I am in my waking life, I will often look. Am I casting a shadow?
Oh.
Am I leaving a footprint?
Oh, that's a good dream sign.
Yeah, so these different dream states,
okay.
states of mind. So
interesting. Okay,
Catherine.
Yeah, right.
Yes. While we're talking about testing whether or not a dream is actually a dream, let me play this relevant piece of audio from the John Carpenter movie Prince of Darkness.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
If we can load it, yeah. There we go.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. We are using your brain's electrical system as a receiver. We are unable to transmit through conscious neural interference. You are receiving this broadcast as a dream. We are transmitting from year 1999. You are receiving this broadcast in order to alter the events you are seeing. Our technology has now developed a transmitter strong enough to reach your conscious state of awareness. This is not a dream. What is actually occurring?
Well, now we know where dreams really come from.
Actually, Rick,
apparently they come from the future. Well, 1999.
Well, and I rather think that's for the next show, What a Week, but I'm not sure. Yeah,
Right.
Cool. All right.
Well, on that note, I would like to ask you, Steve, I'm really interested to hear about some of your earliest dreams.
Well, it may come as a little surprise to those who know me, but I started talking at a very young age. I'm told by my mother.
No.
Yeah, well, I'm just a garrulous old, nit-nat now, but probably around the age of, 14 months, I was talking.
Wow.
And I was talking up a storm. I was a very introverted child growing up. But I had toys and I would play with them, and apparently I had voices for every toy, whether it was an inanimate object, a block, a stick, or it was a ducky or whatever. But I had voices for everything, and every voice was different. But I also had a recurring, what I called a nightmare at that time, and I do have memories going back to at least the age of 2. Maybe even pre-speech memories, playing with toys and being in the living room, listening to my mother talking on the phone or other such things. But I had this nightmare, and it would happen over and over, and I would wake up screaming sometimes, and it wasn't until I was probably 5 or 6 that I could actually talk about it or vocalize what was going on in the dream. But in this dream, I am disembodied. I don't have any sense of a being. I am floating in what feels like a warm, fluid state. I can see colors that are red and brown, and I can hear sounds as if coming through a muffled wall. Sometimes they sound like voices. And then all of a sudden, things start moving. They start almost like I have this vision in my head of these big balls of matter that are softish, but they're moving and they're tumbling onto each other. Then all of a sudden I'm feeling this pressure, this extreme pressure squeezing of my body. And then I would usually wake up and I'd be crying, screaming, or whatever. I wouldn't always end the dream with the squeezing and all of that. In fact, I finally got to the point where I would try to wake up before that would happen. But it wasn't until I was probably about 12 or 13 and had been doing hallucinogens that I started to realize that, and talking to a couple of different people about it, this may have been a memory of being in the womb and then being born.
The squeezing.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I do have definitive dreams of that. From that young period, I can remember a dream when I was about 2 or 3 of my father holding me, carrying me, and it's morning, and we go to the back door, and we're looking out the window, and there's this ginormous Saturn, Jupiter-sized planet in the sky, bright red and pink. And I was definitely sleeping. You know, I wasn't questioning my father about it later. He's like, "Kid, we got to send this kid to special education." Yeah, I don't know. There's something going on.
But there's something large, something big going on. But I wanted to say that I've heard studies or whatever research about people in the womb, and that they actually spend like 50% of the entire day dreaming. Like now we dream just in little bits at the end of 90-minute cycles in the night. But I've heard that they actually spend some very large percentage of the entire day dreaming.
Wow.
And so, what do they have to dream about? Like if we think about dreaming as being a self-solving emotional issues and working out waking life problems, they don't have any waking life
and depends on what your perhaps philosophical beliefs are of where do you come from before birth? Do you carry anything forward karmically?
True enough.
Are you dealing with those issues?
Well, certainly there's a lot of neurological wiring going on.
And sounds coming in. You can hear, you know, they say play music or, you know, speak to your unborn child.
Or even feeling the emotions of the mother.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
In fact, I've been kind of...
And then you can have a mother like mine who smoked and drank before I was born.
Well, we didn't know any better.
We didn't know any better back then, did we?
Sometimes don't do any better. But
that's
and all that gets through the barrier. But the I had a really bad back pain sometime probably 25, 30 years ago, and had a chiropractor who did a bunch of tests, and he this muscle tests. And he deduced that the back pain was relating to trauma that had happened to me in my first trimester before I was born.
Oh, wow.
And his take on that is I probably had a twin that died in utero.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that there was trauma from that event. And, I did, at the time I confirmed with my mom, she did have quite a bit of bleeding in the first trimester with me. So it could be so. I don't know if it is or not. But certainly I am prone to nightmares. I have a lot of nightmares. I had one not that long ago, which really kind of triggered this whole recent thing of I'm in a bunk of a bunk beds, and then there's somebody in the top bunk, and they're being tortured. It's a man or boy, and he's being tortured, and then some kind person comes and takes me away. And like if you think about this as the womb, and is there a way that I was sharing a womb with somebody who died?
Wow.
Before I even knew what life was.
I know a woman who, at birth, she had the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck and nearly died, nearly was strangled. And not only did she have terrifying dreams of being strangled for a very long time, she was also the victim of 2 strangulation attacks in her life, which she survived, fortunately. But, it's just, who knows? But that's, wow.
Yeah. But going back to your 97%, I mean, like we are unaware of 97% of anything that's happening to us, and I would say that's even probably high. I would say the brain is like a very effective filter. That's one of the main things it does is it helps us ignore things so we can stay focused on that 3% or 2% or whatever.
And you could argue it's a survival mechanism of a sort.
Yep.
Certainly.
Keeps the body alive, for sure.
I don't know that my brain could handle the concept of all knowing and the expansion of the cosmos all at one time.
Right.
But I'm hoping that's where I'm going. So,
That's it.
I wanted to mention also, as a horticulturalist, there is an interesting thing that I recently found out about a particular plant. The plant is Galanthus nivalis. It's also known as the snowdrop plant or snowdrop daffodil. Researchers have extracted a substance called galantamine
heard of that.
from that,
Yes.
and galantamine is an alkaloid. It's being used in the treatment of Alzheimer's patients right now.
Okay.
And this plant is in the Amarylliaceae family, or the amaryllis family. You can actually, well, there are prescription forms of galantamine, but you can buy an over-the-counter variety from, it's hard to find, but they're out there if you search the web. And if you take between 4 and 8 milligrams of this 2 hours before waking up, in other words, you've woken up in the morning and you're taking this 2 hours prior, it will supposedly, I haven't tried it yet. I'm actually ordered some.
Okay.
And it's supposedly very, very helpful for dream memory recall and for lucid dreaming.
I have heard of
Initiation.
galantamine. So, Steve, we have a caller, and we really
great.
have literally 2 minutes left, but I want to say hi to Diana from Santa Cruz.
Hi, I've been listening to the show. Sorry, I have a cold.
Oh,
And I wanted to share that I had a repeated dream of being surrounded by, felt like a fluid, but I was surrounded by just this floating, warm, radiant energy field, and just feeling the immensity of the universe, and did not feel like fear from it. And so from a very early age, I kind of felt that it was like my acceptance of sort of the near infinite aspect of the universe was me.
yeah.
Nice.
But
Sounds
the contrary is that I would have these episodes of feeling squeezed. And my
there we
most
go.
greatest memory
Wow.
is having a fever of age 5, having some measles or something, and my dad picking me up and carrying me towards the bathroom and turning me so that my face was looking into the corner of the hallway, and then just screaming and of fear. And over the years, I've felt into this, and it feels like perhaps my spirit going into the germinated egg.
Yeah. Wow, Diana. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Incredible
That's
in
great.
vastness.
That is
To the
amazing.
tiniest.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Diana, thank you so much. Well, we're going to have to let you go, but I'm really glad that you called in. This sounds like a womb-like, or also, as you said, inception, like becoming in the body.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Okay. So, Stephen E. Popp, greentigergarden.com.
Yeah, I might mention really quickly
yes.
that the nursery is not open at present. I'm sort of in limbo abeyance, but I will be doing some pop-up offerings, I'm hoping, in the springtime if my production, if I'm able to create some production. I recently took a experiment in skylight diving onto concrete floors.
Whoops.
So, yeah, but I'm recovering. I'm
glad you're
good.
doing
And
okay.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes, and wonderful. Okay, so thank you so much, Steve. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, you know
my
what?
privilege.
I'm going to catch you 20 more seconds.
Sure.
Any encouragements for our listeners?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that there are so many benefits to lucid dreaming, whether you're practicing yogas or not, it doesn't matter. I have heard multiple cases of pain reduction and elimination. Just, it can be a life-changing thing. Just stick with it. Remember the old farmer who wanted to dig a well. He dug 6 feet. And he didn't hit water, so he dug another well and did 6 feet. And pretty soon he had all these 6-foot holes around his property, potholes. So don't take pot shots. Stick with it.
Okay.
Dig down. Keep
going.
Yeah, keep
Okay.
going.
Thank you, Steve. Love that. All right, and thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, and we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Catherine Bell. You can find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at Catherine@ksqd.org, KATHERINE @ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal on Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer, music creator, and audio clip provider today. Audio editing by Suki Wessling. Phones by Tony Russamano. The intro and the outro pieces are both by Mood Science. And tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.